Good day, good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, wherever you may be. This is Al's Geek Lab, and this is episode 1 of the Retro Reboot show. Welcome along. I'm doing this live right now, but I will have a fully edited version of this online. On YouTube in days to come. But I thought I'd just introduce you to the idea. A while ago on the channel, I decided to make everybody aware of the fact that I was going to be doing an Ask Me Anything, and I also did a poll to see if you guys were interested in me doing, a bit of sort of retro news and other stuff which is topical to the Al's Geek Lab channel. And for some reason, most of you said, yeah, absolutely, we'd love some of that stuff. So I kind of enjoy this stuff. I think it's good. It's kind of much more organic. There's less production time, so I can just riff off some stuff, do a little video, don't have to prepare too much, but yet it's still relevant to the stuff that you are probably interested in if you watch channels like my one or, the other ones that are around there that does retro stuff. So, for example, if you like the 8-bit guy, you like LGR, you like, there's so many great channels out there. If you like any of those sorts of things, retro recipes, there you go. If you like any of those sorts of channels, then the likelihood is you probably will like mine because it's the same sort of stuff. And I thought that I would just do some more topical stuff on top of that, so you can basically ask me some questions, ask me for stuff that you would like to see on the channel, and if I think it fits, or I think I can do it justice, then I'll put it on this show. This is the Retro Reboot show, and this is episode 1. So I'm super excited about this. So hopefully it works out, and hopefully you enjoy what you see. But I'll run through what you can really get from the show just now. So basically, for all the information you need to know about the channel and the articles that I post up and all that sort of stuff, you can head over to my website, which is alsgeeklab.com. You can see it right here. And you can also get me on Twitter at alsgeeklab. You can get me on Instagram at alsgeeklab. You can get me on Facebook, alsgeeklab. Yeah, it's all alsgeeklab. You can get me everywhere, all the social media things. And of course, if you want to donate to the channel to help me out, to help spurn me on and help me buy equipment and just generally make this more of a full-time thing rather than doing my day job, which I do currently, and not that I'm going to give up my day job anytime soon, but basically it gives me a bit more freedom to do this, a bit more justification. So if you want to help donate, you can head over to Patreon, patreon.com/alsgeeklab, and you can also go to Ko-Fi, ko-fi.com/alsgeeklab. Over there, Ko-Fi, the idea with that one is it's just like a little donation thing, so you can just drop a couple of bucks to buy me a coffee rather than buy a sort of a sort of proper donation subscription thing. And you can also press the join button here on YouTube. So if you'd prefer to join on YouTube, you can do that there. So, drink of water. Need the old water. So anyway, that's the website. Go to the website. You can see all my stuff on there as well. But obviously the channel is where all of the latest videos are posted. So, a couple of weeks ago, maybe just less, I was on holiday. I've just got back. I'm still suffering a bit from jet lag, but I'm pretty much okay. It was summer over in the UK where I was, and over here in New Zealand, it's the middle of winter, and boy, am I feeling it. I've got the heater on, I've got the air conditioning out there, pumping on full heat. It's like 5 degrees out there. It's so cold. So I'm just not ready for this. So I'm keeping my hands on the heater whilst I do this video. But anyway, so what I did is whilst I was away on holiday, I'm off on one already. Whilst I was away on holiday, I thought this was a good idea to do a thing, an Ask Me Anything kind of thing. So I posted a few things on Twitter and on the polls thing here on YouTube. And I thank you very much for some of your suggestions. So I don't know whether to have the Ask Me Anything in a separate thing or whether we would combine it in this Retro Reboot show. So for this one, I think I'm going to combine the two. And if there's any other stuff, if I find that makes it too long, then maybe I'll swap off the ask me anything for another time in another place. But yeah, if you go over to my Patreon, you can specifically have an ask me anything on my Patreon over there, and it would be awesome if you could, because if you join Patreon, there's a whole bunch of perks. You get to see early access to all my videos and so forth, and you get to do this sort of cool stuff, so interact with me and basically get some pretty good stuff. So yeah, I don't think there was anything much that came out of my patrons, but I will go over to the poll over here. So, as I said, as a reader of Al's Geek Lab's posts, I'd like to give you the opportunity to send me questions in the comments to this post for upcoming Ask Me Anything video. Ideally, your questions are related to retro computing, InfoSec, Linksy, FOSS things, YouTube, blah, 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 but feel free to literally ask me anything. Some of you have done this. So, first of all, the very first person, 6 days ago, who sent a message to me on this one, and I'm going to completely make a mess of your name. I'm so sorry about that. Sam Salama. Yeah, please, I accept my apologies for totally trashing your name. I'm really bad with these things. So yeah, sorry, I can hardly speak English myself. So so a good introductory topic, says he or she, would be to provide a summary of the systems in your collection and their corresponding peripherals and add-ons, including modern machines. So that is a great point, and I actually have done a few, like a while ago. It's probably overdue for another sort of update. But what I will do then is I think I will make another video at some point fairly soon. But there was a video that I did for my patrons, which then I released publicly. So if you go onto my channel and look through the videos, you'll see like a in fact, I could probably bring it up here. That's probably a good thing, isn't it? Bring it up for all you guys so you can find out what it's called. So yeah. What was it called? This is the part which I'll edit out whilst I scan things. It was for our Patreons. It was somewhere over here. I'll need to find it. But basically, yeah, there you go. Behind the scenes at Al's Geek Lab. So that basically showed off all the sort of things that I've got, and it was a real rough and ready thing, which I took like basically my mobile phone through the Geek Lab. Like I had my camera on the floor showing like old machines and just stuff. But all around me, you know, I've got all sorts of machines. So I'm not going to list them all off right now because there's just too many to cover off. But I think I'll make a separate video where I go through everything. And one of my upcoming videos is going to be about, you know, the various machines. And one of them is going to be on my Osborne, which is, there's a tie to the Osborne particularly because the Osborne one is a separate video all on its own. But yes, I have modern machines. I've got a Raspberry Pi. I've got about 4 or 5 Raspberry Pis. I've got the Model B, the second one that came out, the C. Am I doing this right? No, the Raspberry Pi 4. Raspberry 2. I don't know. It's like Raspberry 2B or something. It was the second one that came out, and then I've got the Raspberry Pi 4 or something like that. So this is this guy down here is, yeah, like one of the more modern ones with the funny little mini HDMI things. This one is just here as a Linux box, really. This one's running Raspbian, and the point of that is to do little retro things with it, though. So there's a old IBM PC XT kind of thing just off camera over behind me, which you've seen in many of my videos if you watch the channel regularly, and you'll know all about that. But what I do is sometimes I want to read my emails, sometimes I want to do Unixy things. I want to basically do multitasking stuff at the command line, and doing that stuff via DOS is, well, it's kind of difficult. So I will telnet into this little Raspberry Pi, which I've got telnet D running on, and I'll do stuff on there. So that's quite handy for that. So that's basically its main purpose. It's just a little telnet box on my network. which I do various retro-y things with. One of the things I actually do. There's a guy called Retro Tech Chris. So if you haven't had his channel, if you haven't checked it out yet, check that out. I'm going to actually do a video on all of the subscriptions that I've got to retro channels. But Retro Tech Chris did a few great videos. One of them was a guide on how to set up Facebook Messenger via sort of RetroPie proxy sort of thing. So basically you could from your DOS machine, your old retro PC, you could go into your IRC chat on there and connect to Facebook Messenger, which I thought was just wicked. So Chris has done a video on that one. You should definitely check that out. But having a little RetroPie for that sort of stuff is just awesome, because it kind of is a proxy. It's a way to connect the new world with the old world, and it's still, you still feel like you're in a legitimate retro world. So using old kit to do new things, and I use Facebook Messenger. I mean, who doesn't, right? So being able to chat to people on Facebook Messenger on a DOS machine from the 1980s is just crazy. So I love that. So I've got Raspberry Pi. I've got like a fairly old, like a 2014, 2013 sort of PC. That is my main PC. That's what I'm recording this on right now. I don't really have a very flashy PC, but I actually bought it from my old work. It's like a dual Xeon. So it's pretty beefy, but it's like, it's a good 10 years plus old, maybe older in fact. It's got a dual Xeon, and it's got a reasonably like good for the time graphics card, an NVIDIA GTX or something like that. I don't even know. I'm terrible with modern hardware. I'll tell you about retro hardware all the time, but I just can't tell you about more modern stuff. It just doesn't interest me that much. It's got it's got a few solid state drives which I've upgraded, and I've put it in 32 gig of RAM. So it's relatively well spec'd, I think, but really I'm thinking it's getting close to about the time where I need to upgrade this box and have something which doesn't creak as much, because when I render videos with the good old Premiere Pro, which is the main tool I use, it does slow down quite a lot. Mac. Do I have a Mac? Yes, I do. I've got a MacBook Pro laptop from about 2014 over there. There's nothing special about that, but it goes with me on holiday and stuff like that. I've got the modern things. I've got loads of old machines. They're all kind of behind me, like the Apple II that you see there, and I've got a Wi-Fi Pineapple there for doing my security stuff. Just out of interest, they've got a Macintosh SE up there. Those are the things you can see in frame. For everything you can see in frame, there's like 10 other things that you can't. So there's plenty of stuff kicking around here. Okay, so I will do a separate video on that question, because I think it's definitely justifiable to do a separate video sometime soon. Mika R says, how about a video series talking about older games and how they were programmed? Now, I thought about this one. I thought about answering that, and I thought, well, actually, I don't know if I could justify that. I'm definitely not a programmer. I suck at coding. Like I did like C++ many years ago, and I do a bit of PHP these days because I need to do something for web sometimes, and the rest is just like written in Bash, and all of it is really bad programming. So I'm not a programmer, and so to talk about how older video games were programmed, it's probably not best coming from me. However, keep watching this video, Mika, because I have something about the game Pitfall coming up in just a bit, which is really interesting, about the limitations of the Atari 2600 and how that console was actually came up with the possibility to make that game happen. So the console, the 2600 itself, came out in 1977, and it had 128 bytes of RAM. That's how much RAM it had, the whole thing. 128 bytes. That's like 1024 bits, right? It's just nothing, absolutely nothing. And the ROM, so that was like on cartridge, that was a maximum of 4 kilobytes, right? So the storage space was incredibly limited, and obviously with ROM you really can't do very much. That's what your program is, but you can't write to it, read-only memory, right? So very difficult to program 255 rooms, which is what the original Pitfall game had when it came out. I think it was like 1982, something like that. So to do a game of that size, that scale, was just really, really very clever, and with those sorts of limitations. So I've got a little bit coming up on that, not my intel, but I just want to share that with you right now. Or what do you think about digital Zines or text files that were circulated on BBSs? Yes. I need to do a video on that thing, because Zines are like, look, we've got modern day things, publications, like Wired magazine. I guess Wired was originally a magazine and then it went online, and now we've got like different versions of that sort of a theme online. We've got loads and loads of websites which have tech journals and stuff like that, and they're great, fantastic, love them. But back in the BBS days, we had these Zines, which were like electronic magazines, but they were kind of underground in nature, and I loved them. I absolutely loved them. And they were on bulletin boards mainly, and yeah, they kind of evolved onto the net, and they became much more corporate in nature, I think. Zines still exist to this day, and it would be great to sort of maybe find some Zine examples and maybe do a separate video on that. So again, I think that's worthy of a separate video, and I could log into a few choice BBSs, show you the specific Zines which are on set BBSs, because these Zines aren't necessarily on all bulletin boards, they're just on some. So that's a really good point. I think that would be a great video on its own. Again, I don't want to spend too much time talking about it right here. But then, Mika, you came up with another question, which is kind of like just in a similar vein to what I was talking about the websites, becoming a bit more corporate and so forth. You've talked there about the internet being too corporate. Most of the big sites, Mika says, are almost unusable. That's a big call, but you're saying that they're almost unusable due to how bland and homogenous everything is becoming. I can't speak for everyone, but I feel like the BBS scene is one of only a handful of communities worth engaging with. Whoa, yes. Now, if you watching this video have watched my documentary series called Back to the BBS, I talk about this technology called bulletin board services, which were basically systems that were around kind of prior to the web, and they were text mode. And look, for me and for the people who grew up with them, they were just super loads of fun. They're like insane amounts of fun. And if you've never tried out a bulletin board system before, watch my videos documentary series, or watch Jason Scott's documentary series as well. There's one kind of Jason Scott's came out in like 2005. It was on DVD and stuff like that, and it was really about the history of what bulletin board systems were. My documentary series is about what bulletin boards are going forward to the 21st century, because they still exist and they've been migrated onto the internet. So it'd be really cool if you are interested in finding out more about that, have a look at one of those, or Google what bulletin boards are, and then get on to the bulletin boards and find the communities that are on there, because there are communities on the message boards, on the chat systems, on bulletin boards to this very day. I was on this morning on it's called the Meetup, or the Gravy Train, which is just like a bunch of people who are all interested in retro tech. We get on the bulletin board and we sit there in a chat room and talk away just about whatever stuff really interests us, and that was really cool. And I think that the community spirit on the bulletin board system is something that is very special. It's like a totally different community. It's doesn't feel like any community I've ever been involved with on the internet, really. I mean, I've never felt that sort of level of closeness. And Mika's not wrong. I mean, if you watch, I think it's part 3 of Back to the BBS, that part talks about a bit about privacy and the corporateness of the internet versus, the sort of wild west of the bulletin boards. So watch that, I think, because that talks quite a lot to the homogenized version of the web that we have today. When the web started off, when the internet started off, we had things like Usenet, and we had, GeoCities and stuff like that, and people were very much open and creative. And I think the internet 1.0, the web 1.0, whatever you want to call it, was a very different place to what it is today. In the sort of mid 2000s, people got wise to making money on the internet, and there were pathways to make it easier to make money, and then people started finding ways to make money quickly. And once that all got streamlined, I guess, it became a much more corporate world. And then social media came along, and it was not long before you really open up your internet browser and you go to either Google, Facebook, Twitter, a few other websites that maybe run by Microsoft, but it's run by the stuff that you do on a day-to-day basis on the web. You're probably hitting one of the sort of big 4 or big 5 companies, right? And that's really sad because back in the day there was no big 5. You would go all over the place and you'd hunt around for like cool out there links, and you'd find sort of content on the internet, which was quite difficult in itself. Like search engines like Google didn't really exist. We had Alta Vista, and then we had web directories like Yahoo and stuff like that, and then we had web rings, which is totally alien now to think about. But back in the day, you basically had like yellow pages and link shares, things like that just don't really exist today. But it was a lot of fun, and I think that whole thing about the early internet, early web, that's kind of gone now, right? We just don't have that anymore. And so now we're kind of in this situation where we have to work differently. If we go back to the bulletin board service, the bulletin boards of the 21st century are almost identical to the bulletin boards of the 20th century. There is no corporate shift or change. So yeah, that I could talk all day about this particular topic, and I think you're absolutely right, Mika. The internet is getting too corporate. Well, it's getting too corporate for me, in my own opinion. And I find myself doom scrolling on my mobile phone and going on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and all these things, and I don't know if I'm getting any benefit out of it. Really, I don't feel any better after I've done it. But when I go on a bulletin board and talk to people, it's like I'm talking to my friends, and I'm immersed in a community and so forth. So I think it's a very different feeling that you get when you go on bulletin boards, and I think it's very difficult to explain that in words. You just have to go and do it and see it for yourself. So if you haven't been on a bulletin board system, absolutely get on a BBS. Go visit my channel, watch back to the BBS, and see what it's all about, and then just go to the Telnet BBS guide and find a BBS, or check my one out. That's a good starting ground. So Al's Geek Lab BBS is I don't want to say it's the best BBS in the world, but it's definitely not a bad place to start. And it shares MRC chat, which is one of the chat rooms that is sort of shared amongst many good BBSs. So go in there, chat with all the other people who are on other BBSs as well, and you'll find them a whole bunch of great people. Right, so moving on. 50 Shades of Beige asks me, what's your favorite retro peripheral? Oh, wow. Well, that is a difficult one, because there are retro peripherals that are true retro in the sense of they have been around in the 1980s or the 70s or whatever. And then there are peripherals which have come out in the modern day, which allow us to do things with retro machines of past, right? And I love both of those things, and kind of for different reasons, I guess. So what do? do you say, oh, I love like the Wi-Fi 232? I love that. I think that's just so good. The Wi-Fi 232, for example, is a thing that will pop into a serial port or an I/O port of retro computers. They include like, I mean, the FujiNet one is a really good example for the Atari 8-bit line of computers. But the Wi-Fi 232 general principle is you plug it into your serial port of an old computer. It could be a DOS computer, it could be an Atari, could be a Apple II, could be a whole bunch of things. Lots of old computers accept these. And basically, you can get on bulletin boards, you can get online using Wi-Fi. So basically, it just connects to your Wi-Fi router, and then, via the power of modern technology, you have a Wi-Fi signal that goes to your serial port, and then you can connect to online services, which I think is just absolutely awesome. And the possibilities that opens up to a machine which is pretty much an offline machine, it was never intended to go on the internet, that is a huge advance. I think that's a brilliant technology. Favorite older sort of retro peripheral? Oh goodness, there are a lot. I think one of the cooler ones, which I want to do a video on sometime soon, I need to get all the software and all the manuals, is the Microsoft soft card, the Z80 soft card. And I've got one in my cupboard, which I need to look out, but it's for the Apple II. Now, I found this out really recently, like as in the last sort of 2 weeks, that Microsoft were actually the biggest vendor of Digital Research's CP/M operating system in the sort of late 1970s and early 1980s. They were the biggest Z80 system reseller. So they sold Digital Research's CP/M operating system, which by the time the PC rolled along was a competitor to MS-DOS. So that's crazy. That Microsoft were actually the biggest reseller of DR CP/M. That's wild, right? Because that was basically that was the prevalent operating system at the time. And the reason that was the case, pretty much, was because Microsoft made these hardware cards, these expansion cards for Apple II machines and other machines, I think, but very popular on the Apple II, that basically allowed you to plug into one of your expansion slots on your Apple II, and then it would give you a Z80 coprocessor. And with the Z80 coprocessor, that was the most common CPU for the CP/M operating system. So then you could operate products which were written for CP/M, such as VisiCalc and all the original CP/M programs that came out. So all of a sudden you had products that were made for other machines for the most popular operating system at the time, and you could run them right on your Apple II through this sort of Z80 daughter board. So Microsoft would package not only the card itself with the Z80 processor on it for the 6502 based Apple II, but also the CP/M operating system. They would resell that as a single package. That's mental to think that they were reselling, and they're the biggest reseller of the competitor's operating system. And this is in a time when Microsoft, I guess, were most famous for making Microsoft Basic on microcomputers. So really, really interesting bit of Microsoft history and a bit of Apple history, really. And famously went on, obviously, that Microsoft and Digital Research had a major falling out over the fact that, depending on who you speak to, MS-DOS was actually a ripped-off version of CP/M. And if you look at MS-DOS version 1, you'll see why. It looks just like CP/M. That's a whole nother video I need to do as well. That really is something on my list. I have a big list of videos I need to make, and that one is that's a major documentary style one that I really need to knuckle down on. I've actually bought some books recently, and I've got interviews to make on that particular one, so that's going to be a good one. I'm looking forward to that. So, great question. What's your favorite retro peripheral? There are a few. I love the CFFA for the Apple II, which is more modern, allows you to read compact flash cards on your Apple II. Same with the equivalent on the IBM PC. The next question was about Nextcloud, and is it a good replacement for Google One for average users? Nextcloud is awesome. I used to run Nextcloud, and what was the version of Nextcloud before Nextcloud? I can't remember. Anyway, I used to run that myself. Nextcloud is great, and it's got so many add-on plugins that you can use as well. It's great for people who know about open source software. So if you are easy with, you know your way around a Linux box, you're happy to set up and maintain Nextcloud, it is great because it's like a Dropbox or a Google Drive replacement, which is fully open source, and you can host it yourself. And then you could obviously share that on the net and so forth. But you have to keep it up to date. You have to keep it secure. And so there's a bit of love that you need to put into it and manage it, especially if you're going to share it on the internet. And it is relatively easy to use as a sort of end user thing. Like mom and pop could use the web front end to it, absolutely no problem. But you have to train them on the nuances, the differences of it. So yeah, I would say, look, if you're okay with maintaining a Linux system, maintaining the security of it, putting the time and effort into maintaining it and updating it and giving it some love, then absolutely. I maintained Nextcloud in a corporate environment with about 200 users. And I think some of the major version upgrades of Nextcloud were troublesome. There were some breaks that were silent, and then I didn't find out about the breaks until users actually reported them and said, hey, this functionality that was in there has completely disappeared, or it's broken in a bad way, or something like that. So sometimes the upgrade processes were a bit difficult. I don't know if that's better now, but Nextcloud is a great product. And definitely more people should know about Nextcloud because it's great. If you could have one deprecated feature from any piece of software back, what could it be? Oh man, look, I really need to think about that one. That's a really, really good question. I think, I've got there's probably lots of answers I could give there if I really thought about it. But one that springs to mind just straight away is version incompatibility, like Microsoft Office. I'm looking at you, Microsoft. Like I have MS Word for DOS, and I love to sit over on my XT over there and type away. I'll write scripts, I'll write stuff, because it is super to sit there at this old computer and just be in an environment where you don't have to have any pop-ups, notifications, other applications taking your attention away. I must be a bit ADHD or something like that, but I love to just sit there and type. Nothing else, no distractions, and I can do that on that old XT in the MS-DOS, single tasking operating system. If I want Word, I get Word, there's nothing else. But when I want to save that Word document, it's Word for DOS. I can't open it in Word for Windows. I can't even save it as Word for Windows format and open it in a modern version of Word. So Microsoft broke their backwards compatibility with versions of Word. So if I run Microsoft Word for Windows 2, then I can open those documents. But really, that's impossible. So it's really, really bad that Microsoft broke their own compatibility with their own document standards. I wish that you could still open legacy Word documents in a modern paid-for version of Word. Same kind of applies to Lotus 123 and Excel and stuff like that. I wish they could just have backwards compatibility. How difficult would it have been to have kept that code in just so they could open the versions, even if they meant that it forced you to open them up and then convert them to the most recent docx because Microsoft evil blah blah blah. That would be okay-ish. But what they're doing is they're basically saying, no, hey, if you're running some software that's so old, we're not going to even allow you to open them. And it's their own software. It's still called Word, which is a bit sad. And then the last question is, what is your preferred CGA color palette? Well, not the default anyway, not the fuchsia. It's the yellowy, reddy brown color one. I think it's a weird one, a weird color. But you know the one I'm talking about, right? It's not the default one that people use, the cyan, white, blue one. Not that one. I hate that one. I like the the sort of lighter colours, the yellowy, greeny, browny one. I can't remember what the actual colours are, but there you go. And there's a great thing about CGA in my next part of this video, which is over here. So I thought that I would carefully prepare some topics to discuss on this video, and this is where I think about the AMA, the Ask Me Anything, and whether I should split up this section or not. But for right now, I will go through some of these things, and we'll see if we run out of time. But anyway, let's crack on with this. Going into CGA, I wanted to. That's a good place to start. Let me just talk about CGA over here. Yes, perfect. Now, I'm going to put the music down a bit.
Do you remember the CGA demo called 8088 MPH? The team is now back with a new CGA demo called Area 5150. Where the old demo was created for an original IBM 5150 with CGA composite, this new demo uses the same machine but with CGA TTL output. You know, the 9-pin DB connector.
So this video is from Retro Eric, but it's just his machine playing back this demo by CRTC and Hornet. So it's a demo scene thing, and what he just said there is he's talking about 8088 MPH, the demo that came out, I don't know, a good few years ago now. It might have been like 2014, 2015, something like that, by Hornet and CRTC. And that was just freaking awesome, and I've demonstrated that on my channel in a few times. Just the other day, there was a launch at the what was it called? I can't remember what the festival was, but there's a demo scene. Evoke 2022, where the guys who made 8088 MPH came along and made this demo, and this one is just sick. It's also got music from Citrix, and Citrix is a guy who I interviewed on Back to the BBS, the one about mod music, tracker music, that sort of stuff. And I mean, like the combination of the quality of the music that comes out of the PC speaker and the graphics and what they can do with CGA is just mental. So for those of you who don't know, CGA was the original color graphics adapter of the IBM PC, which came out in 1981. This card, the CGA adapter, could only do 4 colors on screen at any one time, right? And it was crap, and the resolution was low, and of course the PC speaker was so limited it basically went on or off. The sound was the worst. Like if you compared that to the SID chip in the Commodore 64, the quality of the PC speaker was just abysmal. It just basically was there for a beep. And what these guys have done is nothing short of a miracle. So I'm gonna.
This demo needs 640 kilobytes of memory to run. Every effect except for one run at full 60 Hz frame rate. There is animation during the end credits. The music by both composers take full advantage of the speaker and engine limitations, and overall, everything flows good. No more talk. Enjoy.
Here's a little Commander Keen. So that's the CGA 4 color palette, the one that I don't like, the cyan magenta one. And that's what it looks like, typically. Awful. So the guys here have done 16 colors, and then they show that they can scale up the resolution. So it's pretty cool. I won't show you the whole way through. I'm just gonna bring this volume down. I won't show you the whole way through this demo because I think you should go off and watch it yourself. And I'm pretty sure that the team will release a proper video of the full thing in all its glory sometime soon. But I believe that there are a few little last minute changes they want to bring in and show before they actually do that. So it's like this was the version that was released for the 2022 Expo, and I think that there's going to be a few minor tweaks to have the final result. So this is just awesome. The link for this video is in the description. Have a look at it. Jim Leonard is a legend, and he's the guy who sort of pulled all of this together. So yeah, just my hat's off that you can do stuff like this with a card that was supposed to do 4 colours. You can quite clearly see that's not 4 colours, and the quality of what they've got there is just nothing short of amazing. I guess the more you know about the limitations of a PC at 4.77 megahertz and the color palette with CGA really shows, it's just amazing that they can do this. It's just absolutely amazing. So go off and watch this video in its entirety if you think this sort of stuff's cool. I absolutely think it's amazing. Alright, so that's the first one there on my little list of things to talk about. I thought about I'm going to do something about Xenix as well. I'm going to do a video on Xenix. That's coming up because I think Xenix is so interesting. Xenix was Microsoft's Unix. So I'm going to talk a bit about that very soon, so I'm just kind of letting you know about that. That's coming up. A simple metadata cleaner for Linux appeared. I thought that was interesting. So if you go over to FlatHub, you can pick out the GTK-based metadata cleaner app, which is really cool because I don't know if you guys care or think about your metadata much, but if you take a photo with your camera and you save it onto the internet somewhere, or if you save a Word document, or you have an Excel spreadsheet or anything, all of these documents, photos, sounds, anything, they've all got metadata in them. And the metadata, depending on the application and what hardware you're using, can be very revealing about what you are, what you're doing, where you are. It can have GPS coordinates in it when you take it with a smartphone, right? At any time I use my Android phone, it's taking the GPS coordinates of exactly where I took it, and that information, if that photo goes onto the internet, it's being shared with everybody that can see that photo. So having the ability to strip all or parts of that metadata from your files, whether they're Word docs, spreadsheets, photos, music, whatever, PDFs, that ability is really cool. And this little app here also lets you do it in bulk, so you could just select a whole shed ton of files and then just select all and then press delete, and it will just clean the metadata right from them in one fell swoop. So that's a really cool thing to do. So yeah, you can get that on FlatHub, flathub.org. It's using the Mat2 library, so I thought that was really quite cool. So that's not retro news at all. That's bang up to date. But if you run Linux, that is sounds like a really cool application to use. So yeah, have a look at that. I was listening intently to my friend over at Lunduk Journal, and he had an item on it about this thing called NsCDE or CDE, which was the common desktop environment back in the day. If you're aware of what that is, basically if you ran Solaris or Sunos or some of the early Unix environments, one of the first window manager environments was called CDE, the Common Desktop Environment. And what I think is really cool, and what Lunduk obviously thinks is really cool, is the fact that NsCDE is a reboot of CDE, which looks almost the same. I mean, it's pretty wild. It looks very similar to the original CDE. So you can actually download CDE and make yourself a modern, compatible CDE environment. So if you liked CDE, have a look at this. It's pretty cool. I'm just trying to see if I can find any screenshots for you. There are somewhere if I remember rightly, but basically, yeah, have a look at that. If you know what CDE is and you want to relive your past CDE experience, head over to the NsCDE GitHub page and you can download that there and or install one of the packages. It's really cool that that's around. Doom skins. I'm seeing a lot of stuff at the moment for Beautiful Doom and other versions of the Doom mods. So here's a video of a few mods all combined into one, and this is using, I think, GZ Doom, and you can see they've got it in Terminator mode, and it's got extra jibs and gore and stuff like that. But I'm just amazed at the moment just how much effort is going into modifying Doom again. It's a never-ending story, of course. I mean, people are modifying Doom, but what Beautiful Doom is doing, there's a Beautiful Doom mod project, and you can see the rain here and all the rest as well, the sound effects. What people are doing at the moment is really combining a whole lot of mods to make the original Doom experience even better, and you can see how high res they're doing. So they're upscaling, anti-aliasing, all that stuff. There's a whole bunch of really high quality work going on at the moment that you basically have to add on a whole bunch of mods to make this experience possible. But I'll have more about that in the description. But yeah, just really cool bunch of mods that are coming out for Doom right now, which is making the original Doom look awesome on a high-res 4K display. You know, like, this is perfectly viewable at 60 frames per second on a 4K display, and just going, yeah, this is awesome. So yeah, really nice. I'm not a huge fan of the the Doom 3 style thing, which is where they've got the torch. I like a bit more brightness, but I just think that's cool that it's still happening. So yeah, look out for Beautiful Doom, which is all the shiny, upscaled art, and there's this separate rain mod and so forth. I'll list them all in the description anyway. So there you go. That's Beautiful Doom, etc., etc. Showed you Area 5150. What else we got? Xenex. Yeah, we talked about that. CPM is now open source. Yeah. Okay. So over here, at Retro Computing Forum, the CPM was back in as far back as 2001. Placed into somewhat of the public domain. So CPM, as I said earlier on, is the operating system that was kind of the king of the crop before MS-DOS. It was back in the day. It came out in like the 70s, like sort of mid sort of like 75, 76, something like that, right at the beginning of personal computing, by Digital Research Incorporated, run by Gary Kildall. So if you know anything about that, it was great that back in 2001 it became open source, or at least public domain, but the license wasn't clearly defined, and I think that made a few people, or the majority of people, still somewhat scared that they could legitimately use CPM. So fortunately, CPM, the gentleman who sort of maintains ownership of CPM, has come out and said, hey, no, it really is open source. So the new license shows, let this paragraph represent a right to use, distribute, modify, enhance, and otherwise make available in a non-exclusive manner CPM and its derivatives. This right comes from the company DRDOS Incorporate's purchase of Digital Research, the company and all its assets dating back to the mid-1990s. DRDOS Incorporated, Brian Sparks, president of DRDOS Incorporated, as its representative, is the owner of CPM and the successor in the interest of Digital Research assets. So after many a procurement, I mean, if you think about it, because Novell purchased Digital Research, and then I think Santa Cruz organization were involved in there somewhere, and it just got horribly messy. It really did. Like, so there's lots of sort of big corporate companies that sounded quite scary, and like if you use them or distributed DRDOS or CPM or anything like that, then you could be sued, or nasty things would happen to you. That's all been clarified now, and it's come out so that you can completely freely use the code of CPM, and you can distribute CPM as far as you like. It's all good. So really great to hear that. I think that's wonderful news, because I think you might see a lot more pet projects on the retro scene which are using CPM now as a result of that news. So that's great. CPM, it opened up a whole world for all these early microcomputers. So I think that's going to be great for the retro computing scene in itself. This one I thought was quite funny. This one is a Retro Pi, a Raspberry Pi Pico, which is the really, really basic Raspberry Pi. It's like really low power. And it's just showing, basically, this article shows how well even this very low power Raspberry Pi can emulate a 6502 processor. And what has been done by this gentleman here, he's basically emulated a 6502 computer on his machine here, and it's got the VGA output and all the rest. So it's basically side by side with an Apple II, a real Apple II running with a 6502 processor. And you can see the performance is extremely capable. So, this is, effectively emulating the real deal, but, performance-wise, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. And there's lots of benefits, obviously, of using a modern 6502 over an old 6502. You don't have the hardware fatigue and all the rest. So, it's great that it's very close to the original. Just love this sort of stuff, that people are still doing these homebrew machines after all this time. That's just wonderful to see. And then, we talked about Pitfall earlier on, so very briefly. So let me go back to that one, Pitfall. Here we go. Oh, yes, this one. So this is an article. I'm just going to link to this. I'm not going to read this out. But this 2600 game, the first sort of rooms-based game with the Atari 2600 was called Adventure, which looks like this. And you can move, that's your character there, this block. Literally, you are a box. That's it. But you moved about these dungeons, I guess. I think it was actually randomly generated or something like that. But basically, at Adventure, you had multiple rooms in that game, and it was quite a feat, considering the fact that you had a machine there, the Atari 2600, which, as I said earlier, had 128 bytes of RAM. 128 bytes. And ROM at the time was only 4 kilobytes of ROM. So really not an awful lot. So then if you think about the size of the game Pitfall, which came out in 1982, still using that 128 bytes of RAM and the 4K of ROM, that was the hardware limitation. It is just amazing that Pitfall came out as good looking as it was, because, I mean, let's face it, Adventure, whilst it was interesting, it was very basic, really, really basic looking. So to have Pitfall with all its colourful graphics and sound, its multi-level design, it had 255, note 255, it's a special number in computing and programming terms, but it had 255 different screens, different rooms with different challenges. To have that amount of data stored, if you think about it, is pretty much impossible on the surface. If you and I were coding it, to find a way to code it into 128 bytes of RAM is pretty much impossible. But it was done by a thing called procedural generation, and so I won't bore you with reading it all out. I think if you're interested in this, you should read it yourself. But basically, using bits, not bytes, but bits of memory, you could toggle whether there was a particular item or a particular bit of graphics in a particular room. And then there was an algorithm that was generated to generate each room. It just blows your mind the effort that they had to go to make these sorts of things. So there, I will link that in the description for this video. Just really, really cool that that's this sort of demonstration of how the limitations of platforms were overcome with just very clever thinking. Just love that sort of stuff, and it's great that this is all out. Also, I found on the article for that a version of Pitfall is being worked on currently. That as of June 14th, 2022, the project was started, but the version is being prepared for the BBC Micro, and I love the BBC Micro, so that's freaking cool, right? So you can see development in progress. There's little YouTube videos of it and everything. So if you've got a BBC Micro and you fancy playing Pitfall, then yeah, you can read up on the star.org.uk forums. And then the last thing I had on was it the last thing? I think it's getting there anyway. Oh yes, this one. Because blinking lights, right? Everybody loves blinking lights. This guy here, again on the Retro Computing Forum, this guy has shown, he acquired himself a 1959 IBM 1620 computer. And I mean, the beautiful thing about those machines is the toggle switches, the real tactile switches, and all the blinking lights. And it just makes you go with computer lust. So there's loads and loads of photos that the gentleman who's been doing this up has done, and he's lovingly restored this, and he's using a Arduino to power the whole thing. Now, if you think about how low power the Arduino is, it just gives you an example of just how little computing power these IBM machines, or these machines of the 50s and 60s had. The Arduino was basically one of the lowest powered microcomputers of today, and it's still way more powerful than these 1950s machines. So there it is in its glory. Basically, this gentleman, Owen Ferris, hopefully I pronounced it right, has lovingly crafted this machine back to somewhat of semblance of its original state, and you can see it looking, pretty swell with all its blinking lights there, and its, displays. So he's gone through everything. He bought it off eBay, and a lot of it was just in a complete state. I mean, there were switches that didn't exist, and there was bulbs that just weren't there, and all sorts of stuff. And he went through this and spent an awful long time, as you can see, basically making lighting arrays and making an output on his Arduino to talk to all of this. And yeah, just amazing the amount of time that he spent making all of this happen. And you could go through this yourself, but it's just really, really cool. There's a bunch of Arduino boards there to go through. Yeah, so really cool, really, really awesome. And there it is, sort of the finished article. Really cool. The last one here I was going to show was on a similar vein. This is a portable computer from 1988. Now, I have a machine just like this, right? As in, the case is identical. It's a Sharp PC. It's made by Sharp. And it's not a 386 as this photo has. This is a 386 LCD-based portable computer. I have a 19... It would probably be about 1988, but it was an 8088 or an 8086 machine. So very interesting. It's in exactly the same form factor as this. It's a luggable machine, and I've got to do a video of that at some point. But you can see, very similar, even down to the 5.25-inch floppy disk drive. It's not black, it's beige and all yellowed. But this gentleman basically took this machine apart, donated all of the original retro machine parts to somebody else, and then gutted it, and then put in a water-cooled ITX system with a Ryzen CPU, all modern, and actually made a real machine out of it, which is just incredible. So yeah, it's a beast of a machine. It's really powerful in a tiny little 19.5 litre space. So it's like, yeah, it says here 0.68 off cubic feet. Just really good. But an NVIDIA RTX 3060 with an AMD Ryzen 5600 CPU. screen and a keyboard, all self-contained, and he's obviously done it up with even like a a modern mechanical gamer's keyboard and so forth. It's just wicked cool that he's completely hacked that into a box. That's on Hackaday if you're interested in seeing that article as well and seeing how he did it. But really cool. So there you go. I think that's probably everything I had for today's retro show. So if you've enjoyed this show, then let me know. I think it probably went on a bit long. This is the live stream anyway, so I'll probably edit it down into 2 parts. They Ask Me Anything, which would be the first show, and then a second part will be the sort of the topics which I've discussed. So, and I also have a suggestion from somebody else, which was about doing an This Day in 1980X. And so I want to do that as well. And I've got various things I can talk about. I'm going to talk about the Osborne computer, for example. So that will be coming up sometime very soon as well. But let me know if you enjoyed this. This is kind of like a trial. See what you think. And yeah, if you liked it, we can do some more of this. If not, then try some things out. Some of them work, some of them don't. And that's just the way of it. So let me know what you think in the description. Obviously, I would super appreciate if you gave this video a thumbs up, and I would also appreciate this subscription. And the reason for that is, well, one, it makes me feel like I'm amazing, but the most important part is that it gets the message out to other people who are watching these sorts of videos. And if I can do anything to make these videos more popular and help the retro community overall, that would be a wonderful thing. So yeah, share the love with everybody, and it's all going to be good. So don't forget as well, if you like the stuff that I do, head over to Patreon, patreon.com/AlsGeekLab, become part of the exclusive club. Or you can also check me out here on YouTube. Just press the join button and become a member here. Same sort of idea as Patreon. You become a little donator, and yeah, you can join up and be part of the fun that way. So whichever way you want to join in and participate and be part of things, I really appreciate your involvement in the channel. It makes it much more fun when people are actually having a conversation as opposed to me just being involved, and that's it. So yeah, really appreciate all of your support so far, for all the Patreons as well, and all of the people who have given me feedback to the questions I've asked. Thank you so much. Keep them coming. I love to have all the feedback. Until next time, all the best, and I'll speak to you later. Take care.